Hi, everybody. My name is Ethan Milrod. I'm one of the partners at GO2, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us this morning for our co-hosted webinar with our friends over at Egnyte. The webinar is the smarter way to manage files and drive success. We're really looking forward to sharing with you how you can leverage Egnyte and the platform, how to gain efficiencies on how to, as you are working through your file sync and share platform. I want to just share with you all that this is not going to be a technical technical presentation, so don't worry. We're not going to get super technical. I want to let you know that during the event, we're going to be polling the audience. So you'll be receiving polls along the way that you can respond to. So we thank you in advance for doing that. Additionally, up at the top of your screen, you'll notice that there's a Q&A button that you can click on as we are leaving this open for questions. We'll be taking the questions through the event. And in some cases, we may be answering those questions. In other cases, depending upon the question, we'll be responding to it at the end of the event. This call is being recorded, so we'll be able to share this recording with those who would like to have it, or the participants at the end of the call. And in addition, as you know, we're giving away, there's a raffle, so that we're going to be announcing raffle winners, and just make sure that you stay until the end for the grand prize, to be eligible for the grand prize, please. And I again want to thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn this over to Brian Harmon. Brian is the Principal Solutions Architect with Egnyte. He's been with Egnyte for 8 years, and I'll let him share a little bit more about him and start the presentation right now. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see a good amount of attendees here willing and wanting to learn about Egnyte. It's I've been with Egnyte, as Ethan said, for about 8 years now, mostly on the pre-sales and sales side of our organization. I do have a technical title. I'm glad you mentioned that, Ethan, that it's not going to be an uber technical presentation. It's really going to kind of bring to light just why Egnyte, right? Like, first and foremost, what is this platform? I've never heard of this company, Egnyte, and they spell their name funny, those sorts of things. So we want to make sure that you kind of just see the value of what what the platform can offer. It's our roots are really around, I want to get rid of file servers and move to a more modern way of doing it. From there's a lot of things that sprout out of that seed and in those roots in the tree. We're going to spend a good amount of time today kind of talking about them. There's going to be some demo. It's not just slides, so you're welcome. It's going to be concentrating on, as an end user or as a business owner, the two things that we hear quite often these days are, how can my team be more efficient? It's great to buy a new product if it looks pretty and does its job, but we need to be more efficient. That's a big thing. Collaboration internally, externally, those sorts of things. And then the other part of that is just how I need this to be a nice to use interface, right? Like, a lot of people get very hung up on, hey, if I'm moving from on-prem file servers, drive letters, and those sorts of things to another platform where everybody has to kind of relearn how to do their job and interact with these things, that's a fail in our book. So you'll get to see quite a bit on the day-to-day usage of this, and as a user, how do I do things as part of this presentation. So before we get started, is there anything else, Ethan or Joe, that we want to get into, or are we ready to start?
No, other than I think that for our clients, I always like to brag about the fact that Egnyte is, first of all, a great partner, and the file sync and share offering that we provide to our clients is probably one of the most favorite of all services we provide to our clients today. So super excited for this presentation.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we as well. You guys have been great with us over the years and have grown immensely with us. So we thank you for that as well.
Here's our first poll.
Ah, there we go. I think let me know when the poll wraps up, because on my screen share, I do not see it. I think because I'm presenting.
Okay, good to go.
Awesome. So one of the things that I often lead with is a quote from our CEO and founder of the company, which is a kind of a play on words that you may or may not have heard, where, data is the new gold, data is the new oil. Those are terms that kind of pop up around the the internet and Twitter and a million other things that are out there these days, which is true. It's always been that way, but the insights and analysis and understanding of what you have and what are your employees doing with it is even more focused these days. Sometimes it's around all the threats that come against it, ransomware and malware and viruses and those sorts of things. But oftentimes it's the lifeblood of your company. If your data was exposed and you have competitive things, that's not great. Similarly, if your data is shared with the wrong people and they do something ill with it, also not great. So there's two parts in this quote. One is, what can you do with your data? How valuable is it to be able to collaborate, and who am I collaborating with? Do I control all of these things to make sure that I feed into the next point, which is how you manage the risk around your content. Some people will come into these webinars thinking, yeah, my data is basic. I don't really care about it. But I always ask the question, if somebody were to all of a sudden have access to all of your files and download them and do things with them, is that a threat to your company? And 99% of the time, there is a head nod in the yes direction to say we can't have that. We don't want to have that. It's often not the forethought, right? The forethought is it needs to be easy to use. I need to be able to, click a few times and I do what my task is. And oftentimes the daily user doesn't think about risk sometimes. Way better now than it was 10 years ago. And we're seeing more and more trends that direction. So you'll see us focus on kind of these two areas throughout this presentation. What can I do? How do I do it? What is Egnyte kind of stuff, but also how do I mitigate risk in my daily activities? There's a lot of things that are built in to our platform to do that naturally, and take it out of the end user's hands and onus of having to learn to do something different or do something new, where we strive very much on user adoption and making sure that people, again, don't have to reinvent the wheel in moving to a platform like this. A lot of times people will come into this like, I've never even heard of this product or this company. Are they fly by night kind of thing? We've been around for quite a few years. We're going on 17 years now as a company. We have quite a few employees scattered throughout the globe, a lot of customers. You can see here about 26,000 customers, a very large presence in the MSP and partner space because they see the value, they pass the value off and on to their clients. And then a slew of awards that come with us. So, not a fly by night. The other thing that they do is start to think about us and other products. Like once they learn a bit about us, like, oh, you're very similar to X or very similar to Y. You'll hopefully see throughout this that where we concentrate on things is a bit different. We have a very strong better together presence because in most cases, you're going to have Microsoft Office, you're going to have Outlook, Exchange, and Word editors, et cetera. Or you might even be a Google shop and use the similar things there. Those have to exist, right? We're not replacing those, but what we're doing is augmenting that experience to make sure that it's it feels like it's entrenched, not a bolt-on thing that goes into the world that you live in currently. Part of this journey, and please don't try to read all these words, it's in a little bit of an eye chart, is just where we've come from in our roots way back in 2008 to what we've grown into now, not on the slide, but 2025. You can see that we've always had like this collaboration layer. That was what we set out to do, is to say people are starting to want to get rid of equipment. They don't want to have hardware because of patching and issues and all sorts of things that may go with it. And what they want to do is they want to move this into the cloud. I'll be very transparent. In 2009, 10, that was difficult. People were like, what is the cloud? Why would I put my stuff in this thing I don't know anything about? So we really pivoted into the collaboration model of, hey, you need to work internally really well. You may have multiple offices through the US or North America. You may be global. And if that's the case, you need to be able to work internally better with less roadblocks. Very similarly, a lot of these companies have customer bases or people outside of the walls of their company that they need to collaborate with as well. So you'll hear a bit of the internal and external collaboration conversations as we move through today. And then, about 2015, 2016, we really started to concentrate on, we have all these great insights about what are people doing with the platform. Why don't we start to turn it from reactive log information into proactive information? Hey, here's some risks. Somebody did this. Somebody downloaded 1,000 files in the middle of the night. We don't know if that's a problem, but it seems suspicious. Let's alert people to the fact that this has happened and that they can go off and kind of look into this and make sure that the risk to the company is as small as possible. So, lots of things in the security and governance space. We've also evolved our platform to do things very vertically specific. You'll see a couple of slides where we call this out, that if you're in a financial services, or if you're a construction company, or if you're, a media and advertising, life sciences, we have a lot of different vertical segmentation that allows you to have additional workflows and integrations and things like that that matter to you in that company, in that industry. So, Ethan, Joe, anything else you guys care to bring into this conversation before we move on?
Sure. I mean,
go ahead, Ethan.
I was going to say a lot of our customers are used to using tools like Microsoft SharePoint, for example, and especially for those Microsoft 365 customers where SharePoint is included. How does Egnyte platform compare to SharePoint? And why would a customer consider that versus just getting what's included with Microsoft?
Yeah. So, it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, I see similarities between Egnyte and SharePoint and things like that. And they expect us to kind of have a battle with Microsoft. Microsoft is our largest partner. I don't want to get heavy into acronyms, but we're what we call a CSPP plus partner with Microsoft, which, cut all that away, basically means that Egnyte can be the backend storage for Microsoft's endpoints, Word, Excel, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. Microsoft Teams, obviously we're in a Teams webinar here. It's a bit different, right? Like the days beyond where, left versus right, up versus down, all those things, like that doesn't exist anymore. Most people have to figure out a way to work well together and complement each other instead of fight each other. SharePoint is great for an intranet. If you're doing something minor or a project or something like that where you need to have the calendar and widgets to kind of do things, it's great for it. It's purpose built for it. We were purpose built to have that file server experience, where you store them, the hierarchy, the permissions, and we do it at a very large scale for some of our customers. We have some customers that have 20,000 seats with us and multiple petabytes of data, right? Like that is different. Microsoft is not built to handle those sorts of things. But I would also say for smaller companies, which is kind of a majority of our base, just being able to easily do things, right? If you throw a wrench in somebody's world and they have to remember to go log in here and get files versus go here and get files, that's going to slow them down. And in some cases, back to the risk conversation, they're going to figure out a different way to do it. And that's not good. That's not healthy for a company if people are putting things in their personal accounts and, Dropbox and things like that. That's a risk to the company, a risk to the employee. So oftentimes the conversation we hear after engaging with folks is not us versus them. It's like, hey, what I really like about Egnyte is it looks like the file server that we've used to, right? It's no different. The drive letters are the same. Everything's identical. So we were able to adopt almost immediately. And then beyond that, it gives me the flexibility to use links instead of attachments. It gives a lot of that cloudy things that people expect these days in their personal lives and their work lives, all in one place. So we're not moving files, we're not exposing risk, we're not doing things that are, again, risky to us as an organization. And oftentimes the conversation is around that free, I'll do finger quotes here, the free model of SharePoint. Like everything in this world, nothing is free, right? Like SharePoint is included in certain license types. Some people can make it work, that's great. But some people quickly realize it has a lot of limitations that slow me down or detriment every user I have at my company in doing their job. And that's where we often come in, Ethan. All right. I've been staring at that slide for a while. We'll move on. Most of these slides we'll move pretty quickly through. Why do people even come to Egnyte, or why do partners gravitate and sell Egnyte to their clients like you guys? The first two columns here are really the big ones, right? A lot of times they want to get rid of physical equipment, whether that's the partner's initiative or a client's initiative or both. And we're very purpose built for that. That was our cornerstone of what we wanted to do as a company. The net result is you could be on your equipment on Friday, you come in on Monday after a migration to Egnyte, and it looks the same. You have the same drive letters, you double click on files, you open them, you do all those same basic tasks with no interruptions. And oftentimes that user level adoption and low level of disruption to their world is key in these types of conversations. If you do have kind of a remote workforce or a hybrid workforce, getting rid of VPN, if you have it for getting into files sometimes, is a great add-on. Not everybody is in that world these days, especially post-COVID. VPN kind of died off a lot in COVID, but if, for file services, it's a great add-on to be able to do that and work pretty much anywhere, any device in hand, whatever way you are most efficient. And we actually have a slide on that coming up, which talks about, again, the efficiencies of things. Collaboration, like I said earlier, everybody expects to be able to get to the files they have permissions to, like that's table stakes. But oftentimes if you're working with contractors or consultants or customers or anybody in the external world outside of your stuff, it's been email. People send attachments in email still to this day. There's a lot of risk with it. It could take space. Every time you send an attachment to somebody via Outlook or Gmail or whatever, you've just given them a copy of your files. And some of these files may be sort of sensitive in nature. You have no idea what they're doing with them at that point. They're saving them, they're sending them to somebody else, they're putting them on a thumb drive. That's where we come in and say, no, use links instead. You can control these links. If I accidentally send something to Ethan and I meant to send it to Joe, and I send an attachment, that's very difficult to pull back. I have to kind of plead to Ethan, please delete it, send it to you on accident. Don't read it. It's about you. So instead, what we do is send this link. And if all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I sent it to the wrong person, literally kill the link. They try to click on it, it will not let them get to the content behind it. It's very user friendly. We'll give a little bit of a demo a little bit later and kind of show you what that looks like as well. And then the last two, I don't get too heavy on these webinars, but realize we're here to not just store and collaborate on the content, but we want to protect it. We want to make sure that if you just need to say, where is it? What is it? What are people doing with it? Where is my risk? That's kind of a universal fit for us. But some of you might be in specific industries like financial services and things like that, where you're adherent to specific privacy and compliances and governing bodies that you are mandated to do things. And in that case, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And if you're in that category, one of the last slides we have up here does talk about reach out to your folks at GO2, have conversations. Let's give you more details other than what we'll be sharing in this webinar. So.
Quick question, Brian.
Yeah.
If someone's utilizing the phone app or the desktop application and they unknowingly have ransomware or malware in a file and they try to upload it to Egnyte, will it detect it? Will it alert them?
It does. Yeah. Part of our ecosystem and making sure that the risk is as low as possible, and everybody's doing their part to be part of a corporate security posture, because most people don't know if they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, right? Like we want to make sure that we're protected. So if something happened and you got an email and you opened up the attachment and you didn't even know that you just infected your laptop with a virus or malware, ransomware, something like that, our system automatically starts to find this information and say, hey, Joe just clicked on this attachment. Joe's machine is now trying to upload a whole bunch of this virus or these ransomware notes into the drive letter that he has, right? Like it doesn't know. It just says, I found a drive letter. Let me try to start pushing things into that world. Our system will detect, hey, this is ransomware, and it will actually kind of disable your drive letter temporarily to say, this looks and smells like ransomware. We don't want it here. And that's kind of the first wave of attack. Beyond that, the way that our product is built, even though it looks like a file server, is worlds apart from what a file server actually is. I don't want to get very heavy on this because it can get very technical very fast. But our platform is essentially a very large database that handles all these things. And if you don't know much about databases, they don't allow execution of files. You can't run an executable. They can't propagate. They can't do all these things that a traditional file server is not smart enough to detect and protect from. We won't allow it. So like a simple one is if you try to unzip a file in our web app, it'll tell you you can't do that because you can't execute files in our cloud. So that's kind of wave 2. And then wave 3 is we're looking out for behaviors. Sometimes you get in the lucky or unlucky category of your company got hit with ransomware or a new virus or something on the first day that it gets sent out into the internet. Everything works on this notion of artifacts and signatures, right? Like that's how antivirus works. That's how all these things protect your system, is they look for it and say, oh, here's a pattern, block that. Not a pattern, let it through. But on day 1 or what they call day 0 attacks, that doesn't exist yet. So we look for behavior like, oh, all of a sudden on Joe's machine, hundreds or thousands of files just got touched. They didn't change, they just got touched. That's odd behavior. And generally that's indicative of some sort of malware or ransomware that's gotten into his machine. If we detect that, we alert the administration staff, the GO2 folks, your admins that control this, to say, hey, Ed, you might want to go take a look. And that therefore you can block it, you can stop it, you can cut the snake head off, whatever analogy you want to use there. But then the last little bit of this is if something happened and you did get some sort of things in your platform that you don't want, we have the ability, we have what we call version control built into it. So in a day-to-day operation, if you're opening a file and editing it and saving it, standard things you would do every day, it creates a new version every time you do that automatically. You don't have to worry about it. If you do it on your phone, our drive letter experience, the web UI, it doesn't matter. It's building these versions. And luckily, the way ransomware works is it creates a new version. So worst case, if you had one file get infected, you literally delete that last version, you're right back to the previous one, and you're done, right? Like you're literally seconds, you're moving away from this incident. If it's more widespread, like a bunch of people in the company clicked on the same attachment and did these things, and you may have dozens or hundreds or even thousands of files, we have what we call snapshot recovery as an option on our plans. And you literally say, I need to go back to yesterday at 2 a.m. before all this stuff happened, and it restores all your data back to that point. And again, we're talking minutes for you to get back online. If any of you here have ever had a friend or yourself or your own company get hit with ransomware, being able to recover very quickly from those incidents is key. And in some cases, if you're working off of old equipment and backup tapes and older types of technology, that might be days or weeks before you can get back to a recovery point that works. Most of the time now, if you're in some sort of cloud world, it's much faster than that. And that's the case for us. Being able to recover very quickly is a key part of that as well. So very long-winded way, Joe, of saying we have lots of layers to make sure we're protecting you guys, your data, your employees from these types of things as best we can.
Thanks, Brian. Before we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to remind, just check in with those that may have entered into the webinar a little bit late, that to click on your chat button up top to respond to any polls that we sent out. And also, if you have any questions that you'd like to pose, click on the Q&A button at the top to ask those questions. And we'll either answer them when you ask them, or depending upon the question, wait till the end to answer.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, sir. So let's move into this. This is where we start to put the rubber on the road, so to speak. We mentioned there's a lot of different ways that Egnyte allows you to work more efficiently. I boil it down to this: work the way that you're most efficient.
Seems like Brian. There you go, Brian. You just froze there for a second.
Oh,
good.
Sorry about that. Could you hear me okay, or do I need to repeat that?
I think you should start from the beginning on the slide.
Sure. Yeah. No. So essentially, what we've kind of touched on a few times here is just I need to work more efficiently. And for me, the base of that is work the way that you're most efficient right now. If you like a drive letter, use a drive letter. If you like to work off of a tablet, maybe you're in the field a lot and your iPad or your phone is a much easier way for you to work that way. Nowadays, there's a lot of other secondary layer types of things. It's not just a drive letter or a mobile device. It's Microsoft Teams. It's my Microsoft ecosystem of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. I spend a lot of time in email still, right? Like we're not asking you to drop those tools and do something different. We're saying you're going to do slightly different changes there, which again, for people working day to day, this is a much easier transition. In a lot of cases, it doesn't really look or feel any different. And again, you'll get to see this in a few moments here. And then there's a slew of tertiary things, not just the secondary stuff, right? People work in Salesforce, they work in Power BI, they work in, DocuSign and Slack and all these other things. We want to make sure that through our integrations, you're able to have Egnyte be part of that world as well. Because again, if you start to get to those layers and you have to move data from platform A to platform B, that's risky. That causes what they call data sprawl, if you're familiar with that, which is, why do I have duplicate files all over the place? Well, a lot of times it's just because these things are not integrated together. So one of the future slides we have in here is a kind of a wow slide with a lot of logos on it, which is our ecosystem, a lot of partners, a lot of products that we work with, because if you work in Word, Excel, PowerPoint every day, you want that to be seamless. And even further, if you work in Word, PowerPoint, and Excel every day, some of you may co-edit with each other, right? Like accounting teams is a perfect example. They are in the same spreadsheet, same time, doing their edits, doing all their work. Other people kind of work in a standalone world where I created this Word doc. Now I need to share it with Ethan. Ethan needs to get approval from Joe, right? Like that kind of serial way of working still exists. So we have the flexibility to say it's not just Word, it's Word online, it's Word co-editing, it's Word on my iPhone. If you ever do that, it's not the greatest experience in the world, but you can do it. It's great if you're in a place and you don't have your laptop or your desktop with you. And then lastly, we have a very robust API, which again, if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. We're not going to dive deep into that. It just means sometimes you have some extra customizations or some homegrown products that we might need to interact with or be part of through scripts and API calls. That can happen as well. So it's an extremely robust system, but again, the start of this journey is how simple is it? How can my users do their day-to-day without skipping a beat? And you'll get to see some of that in a moment. I'm not going to go through all this. Don't worry. The main thing I want to highlight here is kind of this top row. Earlier, I called out that we have a lot of verticals that we have applications and workflows and integrations with. If your company kind of fits into one of these buckets, by all means, talk to the GO2 folks. They're happy to give you details into what that looks like, how it's more efficient and things like that. I will call out the AEC, which stands for Architecture, Engineering, and Construction. If you work in those areas, a lot of times you have very razor thin margins. If you bid on a project and you don't have a lot of wiggle room in that, if you're not efficient, that could be a huge detriment to that number. In our case, a ton, I think like 8,000 or 9,000 AEC companies come to us for that problem. They're oftentimes stuck with hardware and literally printing off blueprints and running them to job sites. We've shown that, hey, not only can we make you more efficient, but we're not having to turn non-technology people into technology people, right? Let's let them do their job. Let's make them as efficient as possible. And therefore, we're able to feed back into that razor thin margin to move away and say, you're more efficient now. Hopefully that means more money won out of those contracts and projects that you might work on. Very similar stories to a lot of those other verticals as well. So let's get into kind of why would I choose something like this? Not only have we talked about file server replacement, consolidation is a huge thing now. I'd say in the past 5 years, right? Like, hey, I got $1 to spend. What do I spend that dollar on? If it's just a niche product that it gives me value, but it doesn't kind of interact with other things that I'm trying to do in my organization, it can be difficult. So we've started to build into our platform a lot more things over the past, I'd say 5-10 years. Some of them seem very basic and mundane in nature. PDF editing. It's one of those things that people probably don't give a lot of thought to until they realize, like, oh, I got Adobe and I got these other things, and I'm kind of back and forth in all these systems, and they're not really talking to each other, or it's not overly efficient. Everybody works with PDFs. We have some statistics that we share with our clients. On any given day, 6 to 10 million PDFs are uploaded across all of our customer base every single day. That's a lot. It's by far the most popular file format out there for various reasons. A lot of times people just want to share it with you, and you can't really change it. It's kind of a locked file, so to speak. Sometimes they need to manipulate it, add to it. You can see down here at the bottom of this e-signature, right? Like if you use DocuSign or Adobe Sign or all these other products, we can start to have conversations of, you don't need all those things. You can use Egnyte. We have digital certifications. We could do comparisons of PDFs. We can even compare PDFs to Word documents or Excel spreadsheets and things like that. So if you work with these file types quite often, again, reach out, post this webinar, and we're happy to give you demos and deep dives into it. It's wildly popular, and it's also very simple, right? Like, again, we often stress that in our world, which is you can have the most robust tools in the planet, but if it's hard to use, people just won't use it, right? It's the nature of the beast. So we've tried to keep it all encompassing, and whether that's just looking at Word PDF presentations or PDF versions of blueprints if you're in the construction trade, and marking them up and doing things like that. It's the same consolidation world. Something else that we often talk about is, you might be using PDFs, but how many other tools are you using to augment that experience? If it's just, Egnyte plus Adobe, maybe it's not as big of a conversation. But if you have 2 or 3 different ones for different parts of the department, it's unruly. You have no idea what your spend is around those types of things. That's where, collectively us and the GO2 team can help you guys through that journey and understanding what you have and seeing if tool consolidation is a model to apply to your world. Similarly, we mentioned this earlier, we want people to be just safer or lower level of risk in the way that they collaborate. I gave the example earlier of email. Email is still very prevalent. And in a minute, I'm going to show you the more modern way that we can do things on our side using Outlook. Inside of Outlook, I want to share some content with somebody. Instead of using the little paperclip button, let me do a different model. It's just a different button, but it gets the same end result, and you can send things out. I suspect most people here have used links maybe in their personal life, maybe not in their work life and things like that. We've tried to mimic that same experience so that people adopt. If you don't adopt, then it becomes very difficult to kind of propagate and push these types of things. We've had some customers go in and say, hey, once we use Egnyte for links, we shut down the ability to use the paperclip, right? Like, we don't want people doing this at all. And then they move to another layer of maturity in that risk space, which is great. I am going to kind of call these bullets off to the right because there's varying layers here. Link-based sharing is very easy. Like I said, instead of paperclip, you just click a different button to do things. You could do it in our platform, in the drive letter, in the web UI. Ethan, I saw a little hand up there. Did you need something?
Yeah. Yes. I'm curious. I was traveling last week out of the country, but I still had some work to do while traveling. And I was concerned that I wouldn't have access to information like my files and things like that while I'm flying on the plane down out of the country. Can you talk a little bit about how Egnyte cares for that kind of thing, the Egnyte platform, in the event that a user might not have direct connectivity to the internet?
Yep.
And as a follow-up to that, I may have interrupted you, but very interested in learning about how other users can share files and not be concerned with like file size or folder size limitation when you need files.
Yeah. I'm going to answer them in reverse order if you don't mind, just since we're in this part of the category as well. Yeah, so you can see over here, like, link-based sharing is great, and one of the other benefits to Ethan's point is we don't care how big those files are. It could be a very large presentation. It could be a video that was recorded and shared in your system, because a link is just a link. Once you click into that link, provided you have internet, now you can get to that information, right? And it could be large, it could be small, it could be tons of files. Email is not very friendly with stuff like that. It will block attachments based on their size or type and things like that. And then you got to figure out a different way to do things. This is all inclusive. Similarly, if you have, earlier I mentioned kind of what I call the 3 Cs, contractors, consultants, customers. If you have that external world that you work with, depending on the nature of your company, you might want to really explore what we call external user accounts. This concept is sometimes a shock to people, but we invite them in. We say, hey, you got a customer that you need to share very sensitive documents with. Don't send them a link, because if they accidentally send that link to somebody else, you're just passing that information on. Instead, have them log into a specific folder or folders in Egnyte, and they only have access to that content. They can get in, they authenticate, we audit everything, right? Like all the good risk avoidance type conversation comes into that, and it's a very controlled experience. Back to construction for a second. Oftentimes when in construction, you have a lot of different people you work with, different contractors, different trades, et cetera. Invite them in. And instead of sending them a whole bunch of files and then those files are stale, that's not very collaborative. Obviously, if they're logging in and working in the same space you are, it's safer, it's more controlled. You guys own it and control it against those external people. It's a very aha moment for a lot of people to be able to do these types of things. And again, it takes seconds to set that up. The last two we won't get heavy into, but if you are in the financial space and you work with things like secure rooms, VDRs, those types of things, more than happy to have bigger conversations with you, because if you're collaborating, sometimes it's because of a merger and acquisition, it's legal proceeding, it's other things like that. This document room takes all of this to a totally different level. It's a very secure space, a clean room to work from. Again, if that's the world you live in, more than happy to go into deeper details. And then the last one, late last year, we introduced something called Document Portal, which is you might need to collect stuff from people, right? Like if you're bringing on a new client, you collect their driver's license, copies of bills, bank statements, whatever, right? Like as part of your onboarding process for them. It's built into our system to be able to not only collect that data, but force it to say, okay, yes, this is a driver's license, and this address matches their address on their bank statements, right? It's a very controlled world to do that, because sometimes that's an extremely manual process, and this cuts down the amount of analyst work that has to be done with it. And some of you might be thinking, wow, Brian hasn't mentioned the word AI in this entire conversation. That's going to change in a few moments, because our AI definitely ties into this, right? Like do some of these mundane things that a human is maybe not as good at, comparisons and stuff like that, to validate and control. It's in our world, AI is not coming for your job, but we of course have a focus on it because we have a lot of content, we have security concerns, all these other things. We'll spend a couple minutes on it here in just a bit, but I want to get back to Ethan's other point, which is, how do I work better remotely or work offline if I'm on an airplane? I'm still too cheap sometimes to pay for in-flight Wi-Fi, right? But I still want to work. I still want to do things. When I give you a demo of our drive letter experience inside of Windows, there's a cool feature called Mark for Offline. And if I know I'm going to get on a plane and I need to work on a folder or some projects or some files, I can literally right-click that folder and just say, mark this for offline. A few seconds later, all of that has been cached or copied, whatever word you want to think about, into my laptop, into my mobile device, whatever I'm using. And then I can work with those completely disconnected from the internet. I can do my job. I can upload new files to those folders. I can, essentially just keep working offline. And then once I come back online, it has a lot of smarts that says, all right, all these changes that Ethan did, automatically push them into the cloud where the master set of information is held. Really without doing a lot other than that single right click. If you don't need those eating up space on your machine, once you come back, same thing, right click on it and deselect it, say don't sync this anymore. It's great. It's especially for people who work like in audio and video editing and things like that. It allows them to work at very, very high speeds, connected or disconnected, and then get back to how things are more efficient for them. So we'll showcase that here in a few moments. Again, I'm not going to get very heavy into AI, but I just want you to take away these three blocks on the left-hand side. AI these days, most people are interested. They're curious about it still in these stages. But they're like, I don't even know how to get started. I've never played with it. I'm a little fearful. I'm worried about getting the wrong information. And then what if I shared that wrong information with a client, right? Like those are absolutely valid concerns, especially early in your journey of things like this. So 3 things that we do is we've purposely built our AI around being trustworthy. We don't introduce any information outside of Egnyte. So when you run queries and look at data and ask questions and things like that, you're only looking at the data inside of your Egnyte location, your files that you have in your file server. Even more so, we have a very robust permissions model. So, all of us on this webinar may have access to an HR folder, but if none of us work in HR, we probably have access to like forms and benefits information and basics like that. We don't have access to employee record and other things that exist out there. An HR representative or HR employee would have that. So based on your permissions, let's just say Ethan works in HR and I don't. We can both run the same questions. We're going to get varying results because he has access to more data than I have access to. And none of this looks outside of Egnyte. So we're not bringing in Chat GPT or anything else like that from the outside world because we want this to be trustworthy. And the easiest way to do that is to block the outside world from being able to provide details around that. Turnkey. We actually use this quite a bit across our world. Setting up the AI side of things is literally a few mouse clicks, a few seconds, right? It's easy to get this to say, hey, I have an HR folder and a whole bunch of subfolders. How do I turn that into a place that people can search? Because I don't want them to search across the whole company, every folder. I want them to concentrate on the HR as what we call a knowledge base. So again, it literally a few clicks, a few minutes to get set up, and then it's available to everybody who has access to that HR folder. And then again, we're very business centric here. We're not in the market to, answer the what is life questions or what's the weather in Cincinnati, right? Like those types of things. Instead, it's about the data that you have. And if you're in a specific vertical, that domain specific intelligence you see in that second bullet, very, very important, right? Because we don't want to mix other data together. And then all of a sudden you have results that are meaningless. Again, AI is not coming for your job here. AI is here to augment your job. If you can save 5 minutes, an hour, those types of things on a daily, weekly basis, then we've met our AI philosophy as a company. So I don't know, Joe or Ethan, if you guys have anything else you want to bring in here.
No, just that I know that you want to show some of the live stuff, and I know that this is all super interesting. I'm sure to everybody. I want to just make sure that we're aware of the time. I think we have about 15 minutes left, so just wanted to give you a heads up. You're probably not looking at the clock.
Yeah. No, that's perfect, and that's where I'm going to switch gears. You're spot on. A couple of things, and this is not going to be a heavy, robust demo, but I keep talking about a day in the life of how is this similar or different than what I'm doing right now. So you can see here that I pulled up a Windows machine. This works equally well on a Mac if you're a Mac person. And I got a couple of drive letters here. They look very similar to what I might have had in my old world. I got an H drive, which is my home drive, a project drive, a company drive. The letters might be different, the layout might be different, but it's the same concept, right? And here I see some active projects. I see the corporate directory with my HR folder and other things like that. This is a very common way that people work, right? Like they've got one or more drive letters. They say, hey, I need to go in and, look at some information in a project, whatever. I go here, I double click on it. It launches Word in this case, and I'm off to the races. Behind the scenes, we're doing a lot. First of all of that data is it's not actually stored on your machine. It's in our cloud drive and accessible. You're just browsing to it essentially. And when you double click on it, it's doing a few things. It's my demo environment has it set, in this case, Joe only has view only access to this, so he can't edit it. Did this on purpose, but it's locking the file. If Joe had the ability to edit this information, and by the way, this my fake Joe employee, not Joe Bancroft, but I'm able to go in and do what I'm allowed to do, what I have permissions to do. So I'm actually going to get out of this file and kind of show you something a little bit more apropos, which, Joe has got some files on his, in his download folder or whatever, wants to go look at this project plan that he's been working on, inside of a PowerPoint. And again, these are just dummy files in my environment. wants to go in, wants to start editing, change this to 2025, do all the basic things that he would do. So notice at this point, I'm not doing anything different than I've done before. If you are a co-editing person, where you have multiple people in the same PowerPoint desktop or PowerPoint online and things like that, there would be an added step in the middle that just says, do you want to co-edit or do you want to, lock it and edit yourself? If you're always co-editing, you can override that. In my case, I overrode it to say, lock it every time, let me work on it independently. But again, we want to make sure that we match your work style. And in my case, I might be different than Ethan and Joe, and we give that experience to make sure that everybody is, again, working as efficiently as possible. I'm going to flip back to another screen here for just a second to kind of show what this looks like in Joe's world. So I'm an admin over here. I have access to everything in this interface. If I go and look at Joe's, where is Joe? In Joe's documents, I believe is where, no, downloads is where I put that one. And look at the project plans. I haven't updated this yet. Joe, when he saved it, notice it now says, I can't hover over it too well. It says February 5th at 10:47, literally just in this last minute. So even though he's working in that drive letter, it's all going back to the cloud. It's all back to that single source of truth kind of thing. And he saves it, he closes it, he does the access that he normally does. He loves the drive letter, that's great. Ethan may love his mobile device and he works on his iPad all the time. Same thing. It's just a different path that it's getting to. But we want people to be very simple, very efficient in how they're doing things. To Ethan's point a little bit earlier, what if I have something I need to work offline? I'm getting on an airplane and things like that. Very easily done. Maybe I need to take this bids folder with me as I'm working on the airplane. I can go in and basically say, sync this for offline access. That's all I have to do. You might see a little thing hovering at the bottom of my screen. It's basically saying it's going to cache all these files to your machine temporarily while you work offline. Now I get on the airplane. Too cheap to pay for internet. I do the same thing. I drill into the exact same folder. I go to projects and I go to active. It's very hard to see on the webinar, but there's a little ghost kind of check mark hovering until you get down to that last level where the content has been cached. So the same steps, you're not putting it in a separate folder to do those works. Those things make you very efficient. There's a ton more that we can talk about on this drive letter experience, but the big takeaways I want you guys, all of you on this webinar to take away, which is it looks the same as what I'm doing now, right? Like that's a key thing to get started. But it has a lot of flexibility and other things that I can do with integrations and offline folder sync and stuff like that.
Can you do all that stuff? Can you do all that on your mobile device, like your mobile phone, your tablet as well, in addition to your computer, all these things you're showing here?
You can. And this is where the GO2 team comes back into the conversation, which is if you as a company don't want people to do certain things, like I don't want people to have files on their mobile device, the team can block that. It's all part of the setup experience that they own and manage for you guys to be able to say, let me work with you as a company and understand what your requirements are, and then the product matches it. So that you're not, again, not imposing risk by pulling in a new product and new processes, et cetera. Again, Outlook is another one that I tend to bring up because we want to be ingrained in your world. Right? You're already using these tools. We're not trying to disrupt that. We're just going to give you a slightly different experience sometimes. So here is just a thing I got from Microsoft with an invoice, PDF, etc. I want to save this somewhere, right? Like I want to strip this attachment and put it somewhere. Again, sometimes people will download it, they'll put it on their desktop, they'll move it to their file server, whatever those steps. We have a nice little logo here that basically says, all right, what do I want to do with this? I see not just the attachment, but I see the email as well. I want to select all of them. And you may have tens or a lot more than this. Now I want to save them to Egnyte. I can save them specifically to my personal folder if I want to, or I can go in and say, let me save them to a project or somewhere in the corporate environment, right? Maybe one of those projects that we had earlier. I'm not going to go off and save it, but you can see now I have kind of a mini browser built in here to go off and save this information inline. Saves time, saves steps, of course. I'm going to flip to another tab, which is, whoops, look too fast here. I want to send something to you guys, right? Like I'm sending it off to Brian here, but these are some bid information that I want to transfer off to somebody else. Again, most of the time people will go and click on the paperclip, they'll find the files, they'll attach them. Sometimes internally they might get blocked because they're too big, too many, etc. But in my case here, I want to use that same, Egnyte for Outlook button to say, I need to give some information to people. I want to share files with them. Maybe I want them to upload some stuff to me. I can go in and create what we call a request, where I can send you a link and I say, dump all your files into this link. And then I don't have to do anything. You're not attaching them to me. It's very safe. It's very secure. In my case, I have one of those projects that I want to share. So we'll go back to our best friend here, the building management folder. I'm going to go into this construction project and I'm going to select this entire folder and send that off. That's it. That's all I had to do. I don't need to drag and drop a bunch of stuff. I have control over that experience. Who do I want to send it to? Do I want to lock it down with a permission? Do I want to send it to anyone very generically? We'll pick password. And then I don't want this to live forever. Remember, we're trying to mitigate risk here. So a luxury here is I can say, after 2 weeks or whatever days, weeks I want to change this off to, I want this link to shrivel up and die. I don't have to remember to come back and do it. It's just going to automatically do it for me. So that risk footprint is very, very low there. It looks like a folder, but it's really a link behind this. And if I send it off and Brian went and clicked on it a bit later, it's going to take him, launch a web page and show him the contents of that. He can download, he can do whatever I allowed him to do through that link experience. And spoiler alert, like I said earlier, if I send it to the wrong Brian, I've done that before. I can come in and quickly say, no, that's wrong. Kill this link. Let's start over. Let's do it again. And all that risk just disappeared as a result. I know we're coming up on time
about 6
here.
minutes, by the way. About 6 minutes.
I'm not going to get heavy into the data security side. Like I said, we have security and governance throughout our platform, all of our plans, all the options that are out there. If you are a regulated company, definitely reach out to the GO2 team. Let's talk a bit more, because there's a lot of other things that we need to show you in there that kind of meets those demands, meets those requirements, but it does it in a very easy to use turnkey fashion as well. So something to think about if you're in that world. As promised, our glorious logo slide of our extensive partner network. A lot of this is very vertical focused, but you can see on the right-hand side there, SharePoints and Dropboxes and things like that. We also have the ability to look at that data stored in those platforms and give you your risk footprint and security posture around it as well. You might recognize some of these depending on your various verticals across the bottom, but also just generic things across the top. If you don't see a logo in here of a product that you use on a daily basis, again, get in touch with us and we're more than happy to talk a bit more about that. And then I like to leave off with, why does this matter to me, right? Everybody says, hey, this looks cool. Do I have peers that use this? Do I know anybody who's used Egnyte before? GO2 team is great for this, but hearing from my peers is always good. So if you've taken a few seconds to read this, this kind of blurs both worlds, right? Like Egnyte and GO2 as part of a holistic experience. A lot of times when clients move onto Egnyte as a result of their partnership with GO2, they're going to say, you know what, this does work. It's easy. I got started on day one, right? Like I don't think of another product that I can do things like that. And you're lowering my risk, and we're more efficient, and those are all great testimonials. And hopefully in the future, if you have interest and you eventually on board with using Egnyte, you have something similar to this, because it's worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. And I think this is the last slide. Call to action if you guys have some thoughts or need more things answered. You got a whole great team to work with you on this. And I really appreciate your time today. And if we have a few minutes, I guess we got about 3 minutes. Yeah. Anything show up in the Q&A for us to cover?
I think all the questions have been answered thus far. As you probably saw on your screen that there's a final poll that popped up. If you'd like to just take a moment and answer that poll, please, and then submit your answer. I wanted to thank all of you and thank Brian so much for co-hosting and leading this webinar with us today. I'm about to announce the raffle winners in just a second, so make sure you don't leave just yet. But I also wanted to say that for those of you that are on a server, those of you that use SharePoint today, those of you that use some other file sync and share platform, the migration is super simple from where you are today to Egnyte. And we look forward to talking to you about how that we can help you make that migration super simple. Well, without any further ado, just wanted to announce the raffle winners. So the registration winner is Scott G. He wins a $50 Amazon gift card. Great job, Scott G. And the attendee winner is Richard B. Richard B. wins at a $100 Amazon gift card. So congratulations on the raffle winners. And I wanted to again thank everyone from Joe, myself, the whole team at GO2, and Brian at Egnyte. Thank you so much for attending today. We appreciate it. Look forward to sharing the recording with you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.